Hey everyone, we are live on the Toronto Sports Rush channel on Bet Rivers Network for another Leafs post-game show. I'm Julie Stewart-Binks, joined by Pierre McGuire, and we just watched the Toronto Maple Leafs win in overtime. 4-3 the final. Willie Styles with the breakaway was able to be the hero there. Pierre, we talked about it being a bit of a slow start, but the Leafs were able to snap their three-game skid. What did you like about this one?
The intensity of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the third period, I thought it was just unbelievable. They omnipresent on the forecheck. They were attacking off the cycle. They were jumping their defense into the cycle. They were jumping their defense into the rush. Julie, I thought it was a spectacular display of a team that really had a lot of heart. They really cared about one another, and you could see it. Mitchell Marner and Austin Matthews, they went to a whole other level. Matthew Nye selling out his body in the slot area. I mean, you could go on and on, but you made the best point of all. This team with John Tavares not playing, they needed Willie Nylander. 2 goals in that game, 2 critical goals in that game, and I think that's something real positive for this team.
Right, Pierre, and you mentioned John Tavares, of course, is out with lower body injury that he sustained in practice, and so Max Domi slotted up into that second line center position. We saw him make a beautiful pass to William Nylander, who also scored earlier on in the game. And when you look at this team, we wanted to see when were the big boys going to show up? When were the guys that are known as the scorers going to do something 5-on-5 and on the power play? And they did those two things tonight. What do you think was maybe different about how they approached this game than the other ones they've had in the past?
I think there was just more intensity. You could see it. Guys were stronger in their one-on-one battles. Guys were stronger when it came to sacrificing their body. The guys went harder to the net. They dominated on the forecheck, especially after the first period. I think for both teams, the first period it was kind of like ping pong. I'll chip
Hmm.
it out, you'll chip it in. You'll chip it in, I'll chip it out. That's kind of how the first period went. And then you saw the intensity level for both teams kicked up. New Jersey didn't play a bad game either, by the way. They played a solid game. I thought, when you look at Sheldon Keefe and his team, those guys showed up. They came to play. I thought Jack Hughes was good. I thought Nico Hischier was good. I thought their defense, Kovacevic, was outstanding. Big body. I thought Brett Pesci was good. But Toronto just had more, Julia. That's what I think. They just had more will to want to win. I think they were tired. They'd lost 3 games in a row. I think they were tired of losing games.
Right, and the Boo Birds were coming out in Toronto, which they hadn't really heard a whole lot this season, and there hadn't really been a whole lot of controversy in Toronto this year leading up, to this three-game skid because things other than the Matthews injury earlier on, things have kind of been going humming along pretty well, pretty nicely at this point in the season. When you look at this game, chances for the Leafs, according to Natural Stat Trick, is 69 to 31 against. Both of them had 7 high danger chance scoring chances. When you look at the amount of chances for the Leafs and the fact that it was the same in high danger chances, what does that sort of tell you about their forecheck?
Well, I think it tells me that they were all singing from the same song, but guys knew first man pressure, second man support, third man up high. They were pinching the strong side, defense down a lot. We talked about their defense jumping into the cycle, jumping into the rush. We also saw Oliver Ekman Larson take 2 penalties in the offensive zone because he was a defenseman jumping down by the icing line. He just got a little over aggressive with his stick. But to me, I just think leadership took charge of this game. I think the guys got tired of losing. The guys started looking at, hey, we don't have John Tavares. We got to prove some things. I thought Bobby McMahon had a tremendous game for Toronto. Willie Nylander obviously capitalizing. Max Domi was tremendous. But I don't think anybody's better in this game than Austin Matthews and Mitchell
Mhm.
Marner. Those 2 guys in the third period, that was crazy what they were doing.
They were really connecting so well when even earlier on, sometimes some of their passes weren't necessarily tape to tape. And when you look at that power play goal scored by Austin Matthews in the third period, there were so many guys down low. It seemed like their net play was just really, really strong. What do you think maybe was different about their power play in this game? Of course, they didn't have John Tavares, but what clicked tonight?
Well, first of all, in the first period, I think the coach got everybody's attention after there was the reckless turnover at the top of the blue line, and they go in and score. Nico Hischier gets a breakaway and doesn't score, but they take a penalty. Mitchell Marner takes a penalty, and I think that got everybody's attention. And they're like, okay, less cute, more hard. So they started getting pucks to the net, making simple plays, nothing fancy. jamming the net. Matthew Nyes, Austin Matthews, Bobby McMahon. You saw it all, and so I think less is more sometimes, especially when you're playing against a team. You could see what Jersey was doing. They were attacking the up high play. Kovacevic forced that whole thing in the first period. So Toronto made the right reads, but I just thought shot first mentality was a lot better for them.
Right. It was. And the Devils, as you mentioned, are so good. They're so strong on their forecheck and so strong at off the rush too. And we know that Sheldon Keefe had come back. This was like a big storyline around Toronto. He'd been there for so many seasons and was really kind of a big part of this team for the last eight. Well, he'd been there for 8 years in Toronto with winning a Calder uh, Cup with the Marlies. So when we talk about it in the media a lot, like, oh, coach coming back and the stakes are this or this. But, as someone like yourself who's been on that other side, what's it like for the coaches, for the front office, even for the players, when there is sort of a coach returning to their old barn in a way where there's a lot of memories?
Yeah, there are, and you know what? I like the way you phrase it because the truth of the matter is everybody says, "Oh, I just want it to be another game." It's never another game. It people will say that, and I understand why they say it, but I remember the first time I went back to coach in Pittsburgh. I remember the first time I went back to coach in Hartford. I remember the first time I went back to coach in Ottawa. So you remember for sure. Lots of great memories, especially, as a young coach winning 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh and being part of that and then going back. Yeah, it kinda tears at you a little bit, but once a game gets going, Julie, I think then it kinda goes away. But I think
Yeah.
at the beginning, it's the morning skate, it's having a cup of coffee, it's saying hello to the security people, knowing the trainers on the other team. I think that's when it gets emotional, and then once a game starts, I think you're okay.
Right. That's what Sheldon Keefe seemed to say before the game. Just sort of everything seemed the same, but then you just saw him, bounce off the bench very quickly at the very end. And maybe it seemed like it had a bit more gravity just because we were watching him and the spotlight was on him. And when you look at the Leafs, they had three straight regulation losses. They get this overtime victory over a very skilled Devils team who has been, a little bit precarious in their own right, in their own ways leading into this game. The Leafs have their a rival, an original six rival coming up on Saturday against Montreal. What are maybe one or two things that you would want to see the Leafs clean up in order to be able to keep some of the good things going?
Take less penalties in the offensive zone. That'll be one thing I think they'll talk about. Paying attention to face-off situations, especially without John Tavares there. Think about it. Defensive zone face-offs, especially at the end of periods, at the end of games, John was usually out there. So you're gonna have to find somebody else, whether it's Max, whether it's Austin, whether it's David Camp. Somebody's gonna have to be able to do that. So paying attention to face-off situations. I think shot blocking was really good for Toronto a lot of times during the season. I'm not sure it was as good as it needs to be over the last 3 or 4 games, so I'd like to see them start to focus on that. And then Joseph Wall. I don't know if you agree, but I didn't like the second Hischier goal. That's a
Mm.
glove save. I think he's gotta be better until Stolarz
Yeah,
comes
that
back.
was a snipe too. I mean, it was
It was, but
it.
I think that's a stoppable puck.
Mhm.
I do. So I'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent, but outside of that, there's not a lot. I mean, that intensity of the third period, I don't know how you felt watching it, but Julie, that to me was playoff intensity. That's what you want to see from an elite team when they're down a goal. They've just given up a heartbreaking goal. They tie the game. They fall behind. And then all of a sudden, boom, ramping it up again, and they tie it. That's what you want to see.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It shows the character of the team and the fact that you can go one of two ways. You can either step up or you can step out and really crumble under the pressure in that moment. So it's good to see that regardless of who's on the ice and who's maybe not on the ice, as we know with JT out, that they are able to step up the intensity even when they're down. Now, we also know Jake McCabe came back in this game, who has been very big on the back end for them. What did you, other than Oliver Ekman-Larsson taking penalties in the offensive zone, what did you think about their decor in this game?
Well, I saw a lot of real positive stuff with Tanev and McCabe. I thought they were tremendous together. And I think that's something they're going to have to utilize that a lot in matchup situations because obviously that's going to be a critical component for them come playoff time. something the Leafs really haven't had. I thought Morgan Riley and Philip Myers played relatively well together. There were times when I thought Oliver Ekman-Larsson was really good playing with Connor Timmins, and other times I didn't think they were as good as a tandem. So I think that's something they're going to look at, in terms of going forward. But the truth of the matter is, getting McCabe back, that solidifies a lot for them, especially when it comes
Mhm.
to penalty killing and it comes to matchup situations.
Okay, so McCabe comes back, and you and I had been talking about how maybe this team could be bolstered if need be ahead of the trade deadline, and really looking at perhaps that third line center position or second line, depending on, but that center position. Where is your head right now with what this team has? And also, the idea that there are going to potentially be injuries that happen to guys like we see with JT or we see with McCabe or whatever. Where are you right now with what this team looks like and what it could potentially look like or should look like if they want to be able to go on a long run?
I'd like to see them add one more puck moving defenseman. I think that'd be really good for them. I think they have enough stopping power now. If McCabe stays healthy with Tanev there, with Morgan Riley playing better defensively, I think Philip Myers has really surprised a lot of people, not just in Toronto, but around the league. Ekman Larson was a very good pickup. Simon Benoit is vastly underrated. So I'd like to see one more puck moving defenseman so it's not as easy to forecheck the Toronto Maple Leafs and their forwards can get the puck in open ice rather than having to snag it off the boards a lot. And then you just talked about it, I think perfectly so. A depth player at the center ice position that can win faceoffs, kill penalties, not worry about his ice time. When we won the two cups in Pittsburgh in 91 and 92, we had an amazing guy in that third line center. His name was Brian Trottier. And let me tell you, Julie, he was really good. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was an amazing player.
I don't think I've ever heard of him. He was a third line center. Isn't that wild that he was on the
He
third
was our
line?
third
Yeah.
line center, and Randy Gillen was our fourth line center. And in a playoff game against Boston, Randy Gillen won 15 straight faceoffs. So guys like that matter. They're so important, and I'd like to see maybe Toronto add somebody like that.
Right. Okay, so this game could have gone a completely different way. Say the Devils score in overtime, or the Leafs aren't able to even things up. So it's really kind of comes down to, well, we know, like when I've been covering the Rangers, Peter Laviolette always says special teams are important because they can really be just sort of that extra determining factor of whether you win or lose, and you have to be able to capitalize on them if you're going to win a game. So this could be a completely different script had one of those goals not gone in the bigger picture. In that sense, how do you look at this win and this game for this team? Are we potentially maybe have the ability to overhype this win in a way?
I wouldn't. I'm not. As a coaching staff, I got to think they're going to probably say, okay, here's what we did right. And we did a lot of things right, especially after the first period. Here's what we didn't like. So let's clean it up. And we already talked about the penalties in the offensive zone. We want to clean those up. We want to be probably more stable in defensive zone faceoffs. They'll probably work on cleaning that up. We want to try to block some more shots. They'll probably work to clean that up. But if I were them, I'd be looking at the last half of the second period and the entire third period and say, man, oh man, did we have resolve? Did we ever care about one another? Did we ever get hard on the opposition bodies? Our stick play was fantastic. We made hard, smart, fast decisions. That's what I'd be focused on because that's got to be the identity of this team. If they really want to win the cup and see themselves as legitimate contenders to win the cup, they got to be harder than the other team. They got to be faster than the other team. I think we all know they've got as much skill as any team in the league, and they've got to be way more disciplined when it comes to taking penalties. If they do those things, this team could go on an amazing run. They really could.
Right. So much of the game is how you respond to what happens, and how they responded was incredibly well for a team that was looking to get out of a bit of a rut that they had been in. What was your take on the Devils? What would you say as a team that could be a potential threat for them in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs? What do you think of where they are right now?
They're good. I know they're struggling a little bit right now, but what I like is their size and defense, whether it's Dougie Hamilton, whether it's Kovacevic. I know Brendan Dillon's not there right now, but Brendan Dillon, when he's in the lineup, Luke Hughes is a 21-year-old defenseman, looks fantastically good. Obviously, Jack is a game breaker. Palat's been the leader they thought he would be when they got him from Tampa. Jesper Bratt's one of the best 6th-round picks you'll ever see. What a pick by
Mhm.
Wilshere when he was a general manager there. So, I mean, you can go down their team's good. They're big, they're physical, they're fast. They're one of the best rush opportunity teams in the league. So I think they're a good team. I think they're gonna cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams once they get in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make another move going into the deadline to make their team a little bit better. Their farm team in Utica's in last place. There's not a lot of prospect pool type players there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out and make another move to make their team better.
Right, I mean, they're so stacked from top to bottom. Forwards, defense, goaltending. This is a team that has been built in a very good way and, could be as appropriate as their name is, a real devil down the stretch as the Leafs look to make this, a very monumental year with how they've been playing so far. So, let's just look really very much so in the matchup against the Habs on Saturday and what you expect from a game like this. Hockey night in Canada, Original Six. What do you expect?
Montreal's a really good team, Julie. They are a team. People aren't giving them enough credit right now, but when you watch Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and Uri Slavkovsky play, that's an elite line. Lane Hudson should be in the Rookie of the Year discussion. He's one of the top offensive defensemen in the National Hockey League right now. They've got Kirby Doc, who's really starting to come into play. Patrick Lining's made such a big difference on their power play. He's shooting the puck. They're not getting a lot of pure offense from Alex Newhook, but you can see his skating and his puck moving starting to kick in. And Jake Evans might be the best depth forward in the National Hockey League right now.
Mm.
They got a lot of stuff going on that's all positive. I'll be shocked if Sam Montembeault doesn't start on Saturday night. Here we are on Thursday night, and Jacob Dobish is playing in Dallas. It's a 1-1 tie, as you and I are talking right now. So there's a lot going on for Montreal that's really positive. Toronto will have their hands full in that game. They really will.
Right, some great insight there, especially, hadn't realized or hadn't thought about Jake Evans being one of the best depth players in the league. So always appreciate, Pierre, the fact that you are watching and scouting and looking over tape of every single game, no matter the league, really, too, because I know you're looking at college hockey, AHL, everything there is under the sun. And we thank you so much for all your insight into this game that we just saw. Of course, it was Toronto Maple Leafs beating the New Jersey Devils 3-2 in overtime. It was a slow start, but it ended up being quite the thriller at the end, just what you want in a game when you're sitting in for the long haul. So this is Toronto Sports Rush. We thank you guys for watching us here on our live Leafs postgame show. Make sure to like and subscribe and share. We cover the Toronto Maple Leafs every single week, and we have our, of course, McGuire Mondays where we break everything down that is the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we will see you guys next time. But make sure before you go, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this with all your friends and family. I'm Julie Stewart-Binks. He's Pierre McGuire. We'll see you guys next time.